Can I figure out the most dominant teams in football history? There's a team that went 62 games without losing, scored goals like it was a formality, and still somehow never won the World Cup. And that's not even the craziest story on this list. Today we're breaking down the most dominant teams to ever step on a football pitch. Teams so far ahead of their era that opponents weren't really playing football against them, they were just trying to survive. Before we get into it, hit subscribe now, because we're ranking the most jaw-dropping hidden stories in football history every single week, and you don't want to miss the next one. By the end of this, you'll understand why one of these dynasties is considered the greatest tragedy in the sport's history, because being the best team ever apparently isn't enough to guarantee you a trophy. Let's start with Hungary in the early 1950s, a team nicknamed the Mighty Magyars. Between 1950 and 1956, this Hungarian side lost exactly one competitive match. One. They beat England 6-3 at Wembley in 1953, a result so shocking that English newspapers called it the match of the century, because England had never lost at home to a team from outside the British Isles. Ever. Then, just to prove it wasn't a fluke, Hungary went to Budapest and beat England again, 7-1. Their tactical setup was so advanced that opposing coaches genuinely didn't know how to line up against it. They were playing what we'd now recognize as modern positional football, decades before anyone else figured it out. And yet, at the 1954 World Cup, heavily favored, unbeaten in 4 years, Hungary lost the final to West Germany in a result so stunning that Germans still call it the miracle of Bern. Though monuments on paper doesn't always translate to history books getting the ending you'd expect. Now compare that to Brazil in 1970, a team that didn't just win, they made winning look like art. This squad had Pelé at his peak, alongside players like Jairzinho, Gerson, and Tostão, and they played a style so fluid and instinctive that it's still used as the textbook example of attacking football. Brazil won every single game at that World Cup. Every one. Jairzinho scored in all 6 matches, a record that still stands. And the final goal against Italy, the one where the ball moves through 5 different Brazilian players before Pelé casually rolls it into space for the 4th goal, is still shown in coaching sessions as the platonic ideal of team football. FIFA let Brazil keep the actual Jules Rimet trophy permanently after that win, because it was their 3rd title. That trophy was stolen years later and never recovered, but that's a story for another video. Here's where it gets interesting though, because dominance isn't always about winning trophies. Sometimes it's about changing the sport itself. That brings us to the Netherlands in the 1970s, and specifically Ajax, who won 3 straight European Cups from 1971 to 1973. This is where total football was born, a system where every outfield player could play every position. Defenders became attackers mid-move, forwards dropped back to defend, and the entire team moved as one coordinated organism instead of 11 individuals with fixed jobs. Johan Cruyff was the engine of it, and it was so revolutionary that it essentially rewired how football coaches thought about space and movement for the next 50 years. But here's the gut punch. The Dutch national team took this exact system to 2 World Cup finals, in 1974 and 1978, and lost both. Twice, the most influential tactical system in football history walked up to the final step and didn't get the trophy. Wait, really? Yes. And to this day, historians argue, total football changed the sport more than most World Cup winners ever did, trophy or not. Let's talk about a team that didn't just dominate, it terrified people. AC Milan in the late 1980s and early 90s under Arrigo Sacchi. This Milan side went 62 matches unbeaten between 1991 and 1993, a European record that stood for years. Their defensive line, with Franco Baresi and Paolo Maldini, played such a suffocating, coordinated offside trap that opposing forwards would get caught offside 4, 5, 6 times in a single half, not because they were slow, but because Milan's defensive line moved like it was tied together with rope. In the 1989 European Cup final, Milan beat Steaua Bucharest 4-0, and it wasn't competitive from minute 1. Steaua's players later admitted they felt like they were playing a different sport that night. Now here's a twist a lot of people don't know. The single most efficient dominant stretch in club football might actually belong to a team most casual fans undersell. Barcelona under Pep Guardiola from 2008 to 2012. This wasn't just tiki-taka for the sake of passing pretty triangles. It was suffocation by possession. Opposing teams would sometimes touch the ball fewer than 200 times in an entire 90 minutes because Barcelona simply wouldn't give it back. In the 2011 Champions League final against Manchester United, Barcelona had 68% possession and made United, one of the best teams in the world, look like they were chasing shadows for large stretches of the match. 6 major trophies in a single calendar year, in 2009, a feat no club had ever achieved before, and most of the core of that team came from La Masia, Barcelona's own academy, meaning this wasn't bought dominance, it was built dominance, homegrown from age 7. And then there's the national team version of that same idea, Spain, from 2008 to 2012, largely built on that exact Barcelona core, who became the only team in history to win 3 consecutive major international tournaments, back-to-back-to-back, Euro 2008, the 2010 World Cup, and Euro 2012. No other national team, ever, has managed that trifecta. What's wild is that Spain won the 2010 World Cup final 1-0 against the Netherlands, and were actually criticized at the time for being boring, for playing too much possession football without enough end product. Turns out boring, and historically unmatched, can apparently exist in the same sentence. So what actually makes a team truly dominant? Is it the trophies, the unbeaten streaks, or the way they permanently change how the sport is played? Because if you look closely, some of the teams with the best claim to being the greatest ever, like Hungary and the total football Dutch sides, never actually won the biggest prize in the sport. Meanwhile, teams like Spain and that Brazilian 1970 squad got both the dominance and the hardware. Football has this brutal habit of rewarding results over greatness, and greatness over results. Almost never both, almost never fairly. Which of these teams do you think actually deserves the title of most dominant in history? The ones who never lost, or the ones who never lost the final? Drop your pick in the comments, because this debate has been going on for 50 years, and it's not getting settled today.